Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Derek, and I am the Insight System Engineer supporting Southeast Asia region. So today topic we gonna talk about identification plus restoration equal to business resilience. And we will have a live demo session as well, right, to provide some insight about Veeam Entra ID backup. So super excited to chat about Entra ID, a newly supported feature in Veeam backup and replication version 12.3 release, right? So to begin with, let's have a quick discussion, right? So that we can understand more about what is Microsoft Entra ID. Well, Microsoft Entra ID, formerly also called as Microsoft Azure Active Directory. I believe some of you or most of you heard about this before. Well, it is mainly designed to protect identities, and it also provides secure network access, right, to resources within multiple cloud family. So it's kind of like a cloud-based identity and access management services that all your employee can use to access to external resources, regardless, right, of whether you are using Microsoft Azure, Intune, Microsoft 365 services, or even Dynamic, right? End of the day, you are using an identity to sign in. And all these identity are managed through the Entra ID Admin Center, right? So essentially everything you created in Entra ID is actually an object, right? And this object is in high level data constructed. But for example, like a user, right, a group or application, right, that represent an entity within the directory. And of course, within each of these objects, you will have attributes that store information related to it, right? For example, when you have an object created, most common attribute, right, with this object, including display name, maybe a email address, your job title, right, your contact number, and many, many more. An object can be interconnected through various relationship, right? For example, an owner, um, or a membership, right? It indicate which object belong to certain group, which owner, right? Owner specific which object own another. And of course, assignment, right? Which define which object are being assigned to a role, right? Or those Entra ID do provide a detailed audit logs, right? It's to track and monitor all your user activities, your sign in attempts, successfully sign in or fail attempt to sign in, and also all your configuration changes, right? And do take note here, by default, Microsoft only keep them for 30 days for all these logs. Okay, so in today IT environment, Mi- Microsoft Entra ID has stand the backbone of identity and access management, right? IAM for most organization. So it control user access, it secure sensitive data, it also ensures smooth operation, right, across enterprise. While most business invested heavily in backing up their, you know, virtualization platform, their physical servers, or even endpoints, right? But one critical aspect always get overlooked, that is backing up the Entra ID, right? Without a comprehensive backup strategy, your organization actually face a significant amount of risk, right? So let's take a closer look at the reason, right, why backing up Microsoft Entra ID is crucial, right, for IT administrator on today, cloud architect and compliant officer, right? First thing, application, right? So if an application register has unexpected permission, right, being assigned, well, it result in the application can access data or even perform action, right, beyond what is strictly necessary or for its intended functionality, and even potentially like is leading to a security and privacy risk. Well, this is unexpected access and can be misused by malicious actor or the application developer themselves. So potentially leading to a data breach or unauthorized access. So even worse, right, your sensitive data could be shared with third party without even the user knowledge or consent. Okay, second scenario maybe in a scenario that multiple user account were deleted. Well, consider scenario, right? You should consider this scenario where critical access control are deleted by mistaken. Okay, so in that case, without a backup, ID team would need to manually, reconstruct the configuration, recreate all those user. First of all, a time-consuming and error-prone process, right? Backup, streamline recovery. It provides a direct path to restore lost data and preserving operation stability. So regular backup of Entra ID configuration created a secure fallback in the event of unauthorized access and multiple account deleted in this case. Right, the third thing, misconfiguration incidents, right? Backup also safeguard against inside insider trade, right? In this case, even trusted employee can make mistakes or act maliciously. Okay, a backup ensure that critical configuration, for example, your group membership, well, can be restored without any delay. By preserving identity configuration, role assignment, and your security policy, backup always provide a resilient layer of defense. While organization can always revert to a known good state effectively, right? Okay, the one more thing is the internal and external security threat, right? So security is a top priority for any organization leveraging cloud services, right? Microsoft Entra ID serve as the gatekeeper, or it control access to internal system, software as a services application, and your sensitive data. And imagine if this layer is compromised, your entire organization's security is actually at risk, right? Cyber attacks, right, is also targeting identity infrastructure on today. Okay, threat actor always explore misconfiguration or use phishing tactics, right, to gain entry into Entra ID environment. So once inside, attacker can escalate, privilege, can move literally and potentially lock out legitimate user. Well, this level of access can really result in a data exfiltration, operation disruption, right, and even reputational damage. So although Entra provide a detailed audit logs to track and monitor your user activity, all your sign-in attempts and configuration change. However, retention period for those audit logs is 30 days by default. Well, for organization that require long-term data retention due to regulatory or compliant requirements, right? This policy is far from sufficient, right? So the built-in retention policy in Entra do not provide point-in-time recovery or version history or object level restore. This means that if an object is accidentally deleted, modified multiple times, or it is challenging, right, to restore the particular object, right? So, well, we have backup Entra ID with Veeam. When come to restore, well, we can restore multiple Entra ID object type, right? From the user group, administrative unit, or you just want to restore a role. Yeah, application restore, right? You want to restore the entire application, service principal, or other properties, right? When come to logs, right? You can restore the OT logs and the sign-in log anytime you need it. Right, when you need to restore data, okay, Veeam provide a straightforward interface, right? Provide a straight interface to search for and restore individual object, right? For example, you can see in this screen, right? So while even in the restore mode, you can choose to override all data from an existing object. Oh, well, I just want to restore the changes, right? So skip those object already exist, right? More integration, right? You can even, when you restore Entra ID, you can even set the default password for the user, because in most of the use case, when you need to restore Entra ID, right, the user might lost their access. It is more secure to set a default password, and also request the user to change the password at their first login after they key in the default password, right? So some advanced addition also, you can keep the relationship during the restore. Well, you can restore from Entra ID recycle bin, right, to maintain all the properties. Okay, so well, this is one of the key differential, right, between Veeam and other products, right? Veeam have the capability to easily identify directory changes by comparing your backup version, right? So with your live production environment. So this really help you gain visibility into threat actor, human error, and also prevent further damage, right? So we all know that misconfiguration can happen really quick without you even knowing sometimes. And while sometimes more commonly, right, it is just a human error. Well, I have to say this compare with production feature really allow you to identify those changes quickly, right? So I believe if any one of you uh, with Entra ID, do you think this compare with production, right, features to help you identify what change has been made, right, on the object attribute? Do you think this is helpful, right? So if you think this is helpful, right, feel free to put a yes in the chat, right, so that we know, well, we know this is something that really help our customer, right? Well, okay, so log backup, right? So log backup and restore is relevant because Microsoft store log only for up to 30 days by default again. And if you need something older, then backup is the way to find out, right? For example, you need months or even years ago when you need to restore data. So now what we have discussed, Vim backup for Microsoft Entra ID, we support two type of backup job, right? So tenant backup job, the first one, that's typically protect your user, your group, your administrative unit, your role and application, right? And essentially, these backup are stored in the PostgreSQL databases on the Veeam backup and replication server, right? Subsequently, we also have the logs backup job that protect the tenant audit and sign-in logs. In this case, you have the flexibility, right, to specify the backup repository where the backup file will be stored, right? You can store it on an on-premise block storage. You can store it in a cloud object storage. More precisely, you can store it on a Veeam Data Cloud Vault storage as well. All right, so without further delay, let's switch my screen to the live demo, right? Okay, so I have my Veeam backup and replication console over here. And then, right, as mentioned, Microsoft Entra ID backup. released with version 12.3. There you go. So I have version 12.3 console over here, and then instantly the moment you upgraded to version 12.3, if you navigate to the inventory, right, on the bottom left, okay, you see there's additional invent features added in the inventory, Microsoft Entra ID. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward, right? In order for us to connect to your Entra ID tenant, well, you click on Add Tenant. Oh, there you go. So, if you, that's what I like about Veeam, right? If you don't know where to get this tenant ID, so where should I get this tenant ID and how does this looks like? Well, we have a description over here, right? Copy your tenant ID from the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, Identity, Overview, and Properties. So we direct you where to get the detail, right? So I I'm not going to add a tenant ID now, but I'm gonna edit the existing one to show you, right? So you provide your tenant ID, okay? So caching, right? So you can also specify a location to store the caching, right? This will greatly help you, right, doing the backup and restore. You doesn't need to every time you need to connect to your tenant, right? So it's provide faster logs backup performance. Okay, so next thing, account type, right? So first of all, you can use an existing account, right? If you prefer to do so. But most of the use case, the easier part, the simplest way is to let Vim do the job, right? So you can select create a new accounts, right? So right after you selected created a new account, right? Vim will handle all the way for you, right? Um, if you click on the next thing, well, this is the manual way, right? So if you selected the create a new account, the next step, um, we will ask for a sign in credential, right? It will generate a code and then it will direct you to the Microsoft sign in. You just need to sign in using the administrative account, and then all those application and certificate will be created automatically. Okay, so while right after it's connected, you see it over here, you see I have a tenant Entra ID connected. So back to the home, the only things, right, the next thing is to create a backup job, right? So navigate to the top left, backup job. Now you see Microsoft Entra ID is over here. So two type of job you can actually create. Well, first one, the tenant. That's mean I'm gonna want to back up my tenant user group, all those object. So you can name it anything you want. Next thing, I have a tenant, right? So if you have multiple tenant added to the console, you see multiple tenant from the drop down. Retention policy, right? So you can set right how long you want to keep your backup. Remember, this type of backup will be stored in your Postgres database on the Vim backup and replication service. If you click on the advanced, well, we always recommended enable the backup data encryption, right? And then notification, right? So if you have the SMTP set up, whether or not whether the backup completed successfully warning, you can customize to receive an email about the job status. Okay, so if I click on next, it will give me a warning because, well, this Entra ID already being processed by another job. So I'm gonna edit the existing job again. Right, next, this the tenant. My policy is 7 days. Okay, next thing is schedule. Okay, so that's really a subjective, right? So when it come to schedule, how long should I run the backup? What is my RPO, right? So for me, I think 4 to 6 hours. But of course, end of the day is really up to the customer environment, right? So how frequent do you need to back up this Entra ID? Okay, so you also have the backup window, right? Maybe you don't want the backup job to run at certain period of time. Okay, so if you click on apply, that's all about it, right? That's all about it, right? So you created the tenant Entra ID backup, right? So and then of course we also have the Entra ID logs backup. So this is my Entra ID logs backup. The steps are 90% similar. Okay, if you look at it, the only thing from the left you see there's an additional storage, right? This means in Entra ID or the logs backup, you can store it on any storage you want, right? So you can store it on an object storage, you can store it in the Veeam Data Cloud vault, you can store it on a on-premise storage as you want. So again, select the tenant, select your backup repository, right? And then pick the retention policy, right? It can be days, months, or years, right? And also, if you want to have a second copy of this logs backup, yes, just select the second destination for this job, and you just need to pick the secondary backup storage. Okay, so I'm gonna uncheck this. In the advanced option, very similar, right? Compression recommended, and recommended to put the optimal, right? Encryption, right? Always encourage our customer to enable the encryption. Okay, so if I click on next, scheduling, again, this is depend, right? How frequent do you want to run the logs or the logs backup job? If you click apply, the job will give you a summary, and then that's all about it. Okay, so very straightforward, right? So yeah, I have a tenant backup. I also have a Entra ID logs or the logs backup now. That's great. So if I were to, let's look at, the restore, how does it looks like. Okay, first of all, let's look at the Entra ID tenant backup. I got 40 restore point. If you click on if you click on the job, restore, right? So this is a bit different, right? While you notice, okay, no, if you're familiar with Veeam, most of the time the console will launch a Veeam Explorer, right? For Entra ID, you will see a web portal being launched, and then there you go. This is what we can protect, right? User group, administrative unit, your roles, right? All the roles you created, and also all your Azure application, right? Okay, so and then if I go to the user, maybe I'm just pick one user, maybe Chris. Okay, you can see the last restore point, right? So okay, so you can do a full restore. Okay, of course I want to do a full restore. I'm gonna restore the entire things back to the Entra ID. Okay, so I also can export, right? So I also can export this particular Entra ID backup into a CSV file or XML file. Okay, if I wanted to do so. So the the most features I like about is this metadata comparison. So if I click on the metadata comparison, it basically, first of all, you can pick a restore point, right? So maybe I want to pick a restore point from last Thursday, okay? And then jump to the latest, show change only, right? So I want to compare this backup on last week, 11th of March, right? 11th of March. And and I wanted to compare all those attributes. Is there any changes, right? Is there any changes compared to my live production environment um in my Entra ID now? Okay, so well, we gotta wait for a while because this is a lab environment. Well, but you won't see any changes, to be honest, because I don't have the production access to the Entra ID. I couldn't make any changes in the live Entra ID to show you the differences, right? But ultimately, if there's a display name change, if someone changed the office location, email address, or even the description, right? So if you showing over here, right? If you show you production record, there's a change, and then you can select those particular attribute, to restore them. Okay, so That's the powerful of the compare with production. Okay, okay, so it's completed, no changes because there's no changes. But if I gonna show, because I set to show changes only, but you can turn it off so that you can see all these attributes. There you go. If there's any changes, we will tell you there's a changes, right? So no changes, but of course I can only select a nickname, right? Okay, a nickname, and then I click on next, then I just proceed to restore it. Okay, very powerful features. Okay, so yeah, when you finish with the restore, you can just close it off, and then back to the Entra ID logs, right? So I have an Entra ID logs being backup. If I want to restore again, in this case, if you launch the Veeam browser, right? So everyone can type a comment in the chat. How do you feel the comparison? Is it very helpful? I really like it so much because this is the only Veeam can provide this kind of powerful compare with production features, right? So yeah, so this is how this audit log restore looks like. So I have a March, I have a February. You can easily expand all of them if I click on my all these logs, right? So you can do a search, right? You can do a quick search by typing something from here, and then if you want to select more granular stuff, I just want to I just need this log, or I just need these 3 logs, right? You can right click and you can copy out, right? So, and then same go to the entire audit logs. If you need to copy out the entire audit logs, there you go, right? Latest days, entire restore point, and then you click on next. Well, when is the restore point, right? This is the point in time restore, okay? Because I backup I have multiple point in time, okay? And then you're gonna pick your destination. You can browse to the backup server. You can point to any share path that you want to copy this folder to. Okay. Okay, so that's the audit log restore. When you're done with the restore, you just need to close it off. Okay, so let's go back, switch back the screen to our um, PowerPoint deck, right? Okay, that's end my demo. And then yeah, lastly, this is the open Q&A. Let me check on the question. Okay, they are. Yep, so I have a question here, right? So privacy and compliance challenges, right? So integrated with legacy system. Well, it's costly definitely because it's legacy, right? And complicated, right? It's created customer ready solution, usability, trust, and the tenant gap etc. How can this be holistically addressed? So Karen, mm, I'm actually, maybe can you elaborate more about your question? So I know you have a privacy and compliance challenges with the integration with the legacy system, right? So yeah, definitely it will be costly if this is legacy because most of the uh, vendor will be end of support, right? And of course it's complicated because it's something that no longer support in the market. Maybe it's end of life, right? So well, as a result, right? So if anything, Veeam is actually in line with our vendor, right? So for example, if this is something legacy end of life support by Microsoft, we will follow the same, right? So the recommendation is always upgrade, right? Upgrade. So if this is something end of life, end of support, you should upgrade the system to something that recommended by Microsoft, for example, right? So to avoid right complication, costing, and you need to find a way to protect all those legacy system, right? Right. I hope that answer your question, Karen's, right? So there is no other question at the moment, right? So so yeah, hey Karen, sorry. So this is a webinar session, right? So uh everybody is muted by default. I can't really unmute it. But if you have any question or if you need any assistance, you can feel free to engage our sales team, right? Our your account manager, and and um yes, they will be able to help you. Okay, so I have another question by Tan. Yeah, Tan, good question, right? So how is the licensing? So yes, Veeam practice Veeam Universal License. So if everyone familiar with Veeam licensing, right? So if now we call it Veeam Data Platform, we practice Veeam Universal License. So yes, one instance is actually allow you to protect 10 Entra ID. Okay, one instance you can protect 10 Entra ID. As a result, if you have one pack of 10 instance, you can actually protect 100 Entra ID user. Yeah. Okay, so I guess that's the question I got so far, and I hope the session does help everyone to understand about the new feature in 12.3 Microsoft Entra ID backup in Veeam backup and verification. And again, thanks for joining today's session, everyone. Thank you.